The following is a State of Wyoming WYOLEG.gov YouTube recording from the Select Water Committee meeting,
Thank you, everybody,
January
for
21st.
your, flexibility.
We'll go ahead and get going here. Appreciate if you wrap up your conversations, and we'll get going with our afternoon topic. Appreciate everybody making adjustments to your schedule and the efficient conduct of the meeting so far. Thanks for keeping it on point, and we'll stay focused here and go ahead and discuss surface water drainage utilities. And we have a bill draft. I think we'll have our staff attorney go over, and then Senator Crum will help present as well.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Josh Anderson, LSO. We're looking at 26 LSO 289, working draft 0.4. Just to remind the committee that we discussed this idea at the November meeting in Casper, and the committee asked to move this forward to this meeting for further discussion. Senator Crum has continued to work on the bill since that time, and so the bill looks a bit different than it did when we were up in Casper. It's kind of the same general idea of what we're looking at, but a different approach. So just quickly getting into the bill, on page 2, section 1 of the bill, amending provision 15.7.101, authorizing cities and towns to make public improvements. And in paragraph 3, they can take any action necessary to establish, purchase, extend, maintain a regulated water system for supplying water to and diverting surface water runoff from its inhabitants and their property, including subparagraph B, prescribing and regulating of rates for the use of water, and we're splitting this out now, the use of water, and new subparagraph 2, the diversion or management of surface water runoff in compliance with the Surface Water Drainage Utility Act and after an election as required by that act. And then section 2 of the bill over to page 3 provides that for any municipality that adopted any ordinance or resolution for the collection of fees, costs, or taxes for the diversion or management of surface water prior to July 1, 2026, and that did not hold an election pursuant to 1610-105 for approval of the means of the financing for that diversion or management system shall hold an election not later than July 1, 2027. And then if the electors do not adopt the provision or the proposition at that election, they shall cease the collection of any fees, costs, or taxes not later than 60 days following the results of that election. So that's Bill, Mr. Chairman. I'd turn it over to Senator Crum or take any questions.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, thank you to Mr. Anderson for his hard work and making sure this thing reads right. Wanted to take a second and thank the folks from WHAM and the city for their participation in the process. We've had very good open dialogue and very much appreciate this, so there was no surprises as we came into today. So we very much appreciate that and very much do that. Let's talk a little bit what this bill is and what this bill is not. This bill is not new legislation and the fact that it's not creating a new structure or anything new. What this bill does is a clarification of saying, if you do what's in 15.7.401, which is fine, the city of Laramie, and I believe the city of Cheyenne and a couple other municipalities are looking at doing this in the state. That's totally fine. All it does is say what's in current statute in 1610-105E. It's just saying we need to follow what's currently in the statute and not ignore the statute, not 15.7.401 is not a standalone where you can ignore the rest of the big green books that we have. You've got to follow what's in the green books. This case, it's in 1610-105. And in 1610-105E, in the statute, if you form that district and you want to fund out a stormwater utility district, in this case, or other utility districts, it's very clear in the statute. In E, it says a governing body shall not fund a surface water utility until the proper position to impose the means of financing the surface water drainage utility has been submitted to and adopted by the electors. Very clear. If you're going to do it, you got to take it to the electors. And it says financing, and it does. Financing could mean you take it to the electors for a fee on your existing water bill or utility bill. It could mean a 6 penny. It could mean a bond issue. It could mean maybe we're going to go out and find a bunch of rich dudes to fund this for the city. It could mean a lot of things. But if you're going to finance this, you have to take it to the voters the way it says. It's very, very straightforward. This bill is not adding any new caveats to it. The only thing new is at the end, to be very fair to the communities that have collected a fee already, is that they don't have to hurry up and run home and refund fees. They have a chance to explain the case to the voter, and then the voter approve or disapprove. If the voter approves the utilities plan, they get to keep the fee and march on. If for some reason the voters choose not to, don't think that it's a good project for their community, then they need to refund those fees that they've already collected under the thing. So it gives them a chance until July 1st of 2027, so almost a year and a half, to come up with a plan to sell. In our community in the past, we have had bond issues that have passed overwhelmingly when there was been a really good project. Our community has been very, very generous to schools and other things. And I don't see where our community wouldn't be very, very generous to stormwater drainage if it was presented correctly. Again, this bill is also not arguing whether a project is being presented by a city. I think the city of Laramie has presented a packet to everybody. This bill doesn't address that packet. The bill is not trying to say, is that a worthy project, a bad project, a good project? It's just saying, if that project is a good project and you want to take it forward, then you need to follow the statutes in 16 as written. It's not trying to say a thing. You're going to hear some things that, well, maybe, the University of Wyoming, I've been told, pays $48,000 a month under the current fee. That's what I've been told. It may vary a little bit from that. On this fee, as a tax-free entity, they would not pay a tax. I think that's something that maybe an interim ought to look at, is how do large municipalities, maybe even the state here in Cheyenne, come up with a way where they pay their fair share for the part of the utilities they do. But this bill is not trying to address any of that, nor intended to address any of that. That's probably an interim topic for next year, not germane to this bill as we look at it. If there's talk, well, maybe we'll reduce the fee to some of these public entities or not charge them. Well, the project doesn't go down, so where's that money go? It goes back to the private landowner whose fee is now in place, will go up. And shouldn't that private landowner have a say by voting on the tax that is being imposed on them, whether it's called a fee or a tax? Shouldn't the private landowner have the right to vote on it as it's stated in the statute? We're going to hear about, well, this bill is taking away local control. This bill doesn't take away local control. In fact, what it does, it ensures real local control, right? The voters have control locally. So this bill is very, very straightforward. It's just saying we've got statutes in place in two different places in our green books, one in 15 and one in 16. And it shows if you're going to do these activities, just follow the statute. So I look forward to hearing it. Again, it's been a great relationship working with the folks at WHAM and the communities. And I just hope that we continue to follow statutes. I hope we avoid, there's many, many lawsuits that have been filed and are about to be filed in this case based upon these statutes. And by approving this bill, we do away with all that, save everybody, including the state, the counties, municipalities, a bunch of money and time by going through almost frivolous lawsuits. So I would encourage certainly the adoption of this draft bill, which very clearly is not trying to change the law. It's just trying to make it very clear if we're doing one part of it, we need to follow the other parts of our statutes that have been approved by this legislative body.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Appreciate that overview. Representative Chestic, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a lot of questions about this bill. It's every time I read the bill and every time I read Title 15 and Title 16, I get more confused. It's a very confusing area. So my primary concern right now is that we don't cause unintended consequences. So I guess my first question would be for Mr. Anderson. If you could help me understand the difference between Title 15 and Title 16. The way I read it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is Title 15 gives the municipalities the power to do stormwater management projects. And Title 16, it looks to me like it says if you choose to finance that in particular ways, you must go to the voters. But there still could be some ways of doing these projects that don't fall under Title 16, and you can do them without a vote. Can you help me understand the difference between 15 and 16?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Chestic, I think that's an excellent question. And I think, as the way those sections are currently written, I think those arguments can certainly be made. And I think that's part of the point of this bill draft is to clarify, or not necessarily clarify, but to specify with 16. So I think right now in the statute, that's not clear. And so I think that's part of the point of this legislation is to add that clarity. And it's certainly a policy choice of the legislature.
Get through the interim or whatever process takes place, it becomes very clear what the rules are, where there is no ambiguity in the meantime. And that's what this bill is exactly trying to do, is take ambiguity out of the system, allow the system time to work together to come up with the solution, but in the meantime, to take ambiguity out, stop all these lawsuits, and make it workable for everybody.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I have a follow-up. I probably have several follow-ups, but I appreciate Senator Crum's intent to help to try and clear up the ambiguity. There's a lot of ambiguity here. The way these two sections work together, it's a mess. But I don't see this bill actually clearing up the ambiguity. To me, the ambiguity is in Section 16, and you're only amending 15. In 16, the words that I find ambiguous are the words surface water drainage utility. What is a surface water drainage utility? It's defined it's defined in Section 16 to refer to some kind of enterprise fund. So it's an accounting thing, I guess, but then it's not necessarily understood that way by other people. So the bill does not change the definition of surface water drainage utility, which is where I think the problem is. So my question is the definition, so the city of Laramie I think there's a lawsuit currently pending in Albany County and Laramie County. Both Cheyenne and Laramie have done similar things. And I understand, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, is one of the issues in the current litigation, a decision as to whether what those two cities have done, whether they qualify as a surface water drainage utility or not. Is that the issue before the court?
I don't pretend to be an attorney. I can't answer that question. I don't know. Mr. Anderson can.
And Mr. Chairman, I apologize, but I'm not familiar with the details of that case, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, so I'll follow up. I'll pass for now. Let me think some more.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Chairman. Senator Crum, I wanted to clarify, I think you said in the last paragraph that if the electorate voted to not implement the tax or fee, that there would be a clawback, but it doesn't seem to indicate that. And so I just wanted you to clarify your understanding of what you wanted or what it says.
Hold on just a second here. I'm trying to find it for you. I think maybe that needs some clarification, an amendment in there, because it refers to up above, right? That if you don't hold the election, you got to do that. And I guess it's presumed that you got to do that, but maybe that's a little clarification amendment that could be made there, that if you don't, you give it back. Because the intent is certainly to, give them a chance to sell the project. It's not trying to cut it off. Again, this bill has nothing to do with trying to say whether a project's a good project or a bad project. It's just trying to clarify this ambiguity that the representative talked about. And maybe it's a good amendment to that.
Follow up based on that. Are you aware of any other circumstances where a municipality may refund, a large group of users, and how's that worked? Say somebody moves and, the current, homeowner didn't pay anything but a portion of the fee. Do they get the full refund? Any example as to how that's worked?
I do know, not on a large scale, but I do know on an individual basis when somebody pays a fee that's was over what was required or not required, they were misbilled, then that fee is refunded. And basically that's what this is, right? If you weren't allowed to do it, you've been misbilled, and so therefore that gets refunded.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. I'm guessing we have some public testimony, so feel free to come on down, introduce yourself for the record, and go ahead and proceed. And we'll try to go through the in-person first, and we'll switch to online, if that works for everybody.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Ashley Harpstreet. I'm the Executive Director for Wyoming Association of Municipalities. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I just want to take a step back. Our main goal is the same as yours. It is to serve Wyoming taxpayers efficiently, transparently, and sustainably. Cities and towns want to be responsible partners in addressing water and infrastructure challenges, but we also need the flexibility to manage local systems within the authority already granted to us by the Wyoming Constitution and state law. Under Article 13, Section 1 of the Wyoming State Constitution and Wyoming Statute 16-10-102, municipalities have home rule authority to manage local affairs, including infrastructure and utility services. Furthermore, Wyoming Statute 15-7-101A4 gives cities explicit authority to establish and maintain systems for the collection and disposal of sewage and drainage, and to fix and collect rates for services rendered. Stormwater management falls squarely in that scope. Communities such as Cody, Evanston, and Cheyenne already operate stormwater systems under this authority, and others like Laramie are ready to do the same. Municipalities are not asking for new powers only to continue managing these services under the local authority the legislature has already granted. Under Wyoming constitutional principles, a fee is not a tax when it is based on actual or estimated use or benefit and is dedicated to funding a specific service. That's exactly what a stormwater utility fee is, a charge tied to the cost and benefit of managing runoff used exclusively for that purpose through a dedicated enterprise fund. It's modeled the same way we fund water, sewer, and sanitation services. Municipalities serve 68% of Wyoming's population within our boundaries, but we support 100% of residents, visitors, and businesses that rely on our streets, utilities, and emergency services every day. At the same time, ongoing property tax reductions, government exemptions for state-owned properties, and state preemption of local fiscal tools continue to constrain our ability to raise revenue responsibly. Each new limitation adds pressure to local budgets and pushes essential infrastructure costs further onto the individual taxpayer. In communities like Laramie, where University of Wyoming and other large governmental entities occupy substantial portions of the tax base but are exempt from taxation, that imbalance becomes even more pronounced. These institutions and agencies rightfully contribute to Wyoming's economy, but they also rely heavily on municipal infrastructures, streets, drainage systems, emergency response, and utilities that are funded by local residents and businesses. This unfortunately creates what we call an inverted business case, where the local taxpayers who fund city operations effectively subsidize the services used by entities exempt from local taxation. If we are to have a meaningful, sustainable discussion about water and stormwater infrastructure, government users must be part of that holistic conversation alongside the broader review of our state's tax structure and fiscal framework. The result of inaction is fewer resources for basic services and less flexibility to adapt to local solutions, all while the need for investment in stormwater and water infrastructure continues to grow. Each year that communities are forced to pause or delay projects, the costs compound through inflation, escalating construction costs, and deferred maintenance, ultimately making future solutions of any kind more expensive and less attainable. Rather than advancing new restrictions, I respectfully ask that we allow this issue to be examined through ongoing interim water funding study. That process provides the right to evaluate costs, benefits, and governance models in a way that strengthens, not fragments, our shared fiscal responsibility. Today, I have with me several of the communities who can further expand on the current needs and challenges of maintaining these vital infrastructure systems. We stand to work with you to advance solutions that preserve local authority, protect taxpayers, and keep public health and safety at the forefront of Wyoming's municipal services. With that, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, I introduce my friends that are with me today.
Okay, we'll ask any questions. Go ahead, Representative.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before we here, I don't think anybody disagrees with anything you said, but the statute's very clear. It needs to go to the voters. And I agree, the projects are very viable. I mean, that's nobody's arguing that. But what I want to hear, if you believe you're in violation of that statute or not, and I think we can take it to the interim of these things. But right now, what we're trying to solve is being in violation of a statute. And that's before and I know we're going to hear this project in this community is great. That's fine. The bulk of the matter is this statute that we're talking about. And so I think that's what I want to hear, more of how great the projects are. I want to hear, are we in violation of the statute? And what are we going to do to come into compliance with the existing statute?
Have a response.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Banks, I think that's a very fair and valid question, and I agree. We believe that it is a little nebulous, but we believe that we are following the letter to the law. Of course, we all have attorneys on staff. We have other attorneys we've hired to make sure we feel like we're in the boundaries of that. We do believe that the statute could use some cleanup. This is not the approach we would take because we feel like once you start creeping into stormwater, that's going to pull every other enterprise and utility that we administer by, and that's why I started with the constitutional authority of home rule. So we do not believe, and we think that the lawsuit should play out in the interim to provide that clarity for us to provide the proper fix to these statutes and the way that we approach this. But in the meantime, no, absolutely not.
You go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on that. And the rest of the projects, I think that's great. But you look at the wording in the statute is surface water drainage. And to me, it specifically says surface water drainage to the electors. And so the home rule thing and everything that's water and sewer, that I think is played out. You have the authority to do that. I think that's great. But I just, what is the take, I guess, and maybe we need an attorney's opinion or something like this. What's the take on that very specific language of surface water drainage and coming to the vote? I guess when the decision was made, and maybe a mayor or something, when the decision was made to put this into place, how did you get around the statutory provision of going to the electors?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Banks, again, my phone is blowing up right now that nobody feels like they're in violation of that statute, because that's one of the things WHAM does is make sure that the laws that you guys craft, we make sure that we're following it to the letter of the law. And at this time, we feel like we are in the realms of executing it appropriately. I am not an attorney. But I do have some witnesses here that can give more testimony on how they feel like they're following that, if that's okay.
Okay, any further questions before we move on? Okay, and I guess I'll jump in. Obviously this is a bill that deals with stormwater. I don't think there's any, unless we amend it here today, it's very difficult to add other things in. So I'm not sure if the slippery slope argument applies, but also seems like, we could introduce this bill, we could have a discussion in the budget session, it could go your way. We could have an amendment that clarifies that, in fact, you do not have to go to the electors. And so I don't understand why you'd want to litigate this in the courts when there seems to be a problem with the statute. Why wouldn't the solution, one way or the other, be simply to fix the statute so there's less ambiguity? Okay, feel free to defer, any of you, and then we can have Representative Cheswick chime in. Of course, lawyers want the judicial branch to solve things, right? But that was directed either towards somebody from WHAM. So,
Mr. Chairman, maybe I'll give my testimony, then I can try to answer those questions the best that I can.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Mayor Patrick Collins from the city of Cheyenne. August 1st, 1985, a supercell thunderstorm hit the city of Cheyenne. The storm became the most damaging flood in Wyoming's history, with 12 people dying, 70 injured, and damage in today's dollars of around $200 million. In the 40 years since this devastating storm, the city of Cheyenne has worked to improve our drainage facilities so our community will never face these risks again. Grants from FEMA helped Cheyenne construct many capital projects, but the challenge that we find is finding the resources to maintain our surface water drainage systems. In the city of Cheyenne today, we have 136 miles of underground drainage pipes, 1,659 manholes, 4,119 storm drain inlets, 472 detention ponds covering 160 acres, 6 lakes, 3 dams, 25 miles of open channels, and countless culverts and bridges. For 40 years, our storm fund has been chronically underfunded. With all the other responsibilities like having 373 centerline miles of roads, fire, police, we've only been able to fund our stormwater program at about $1 million a year. We just received a bid for channel dredging that came in at $750,000 a mile. I'll remind you, we have 25 miles of open channel. The cost of maintaining our stormwater facilities is beyond our ability to fund in our current funding mechanisms. I became mayor in January of 2021, and our governing body set a goal of funding our stormwater fund to allow proper maintenance and money to match grants to continue to improve our system. Since that time, we've worked to create a program based on the state law that was passed the previous year to allow governing bodies to pass a storm fee by ordinance. We passed the ordinance in December of 2024, and since that time, we've been working to create a program that was fair for everyone. We used an AI tool to help us measure every property in Cheyenne to determine the amount of hard packed surface that contributes to our community-wide drainage challenges. We've identified over 28,000 properties, and we have a team that's been working for the last year to create a billing system for them. After 5 years of work and expense, we're 3 months away from implementing this enhanced program. I spent the last 35 years running a Wyoming small business. Fact is, Senator Crum gave me my very first loan to help me get started. And it's the same way that we've set up our surface water fund, like a business, by creating an enterprise fund. In our enterprise fund, every dollar goes into a special account that can only spend on the purposes of our surface water fund. I appreciate that many of you have heard complaints that the law passed in 2020 has resulted in a new fee that they have to pay. And we really tried hard to make the fee fair, to make sure that the fee is only used for the stated purposes, and we'll begin the process of making our community safer. But we need your help in supporting Wyoming municipalities to make that goal reached. And I'd answer any questions. And maybe the first one you asked was, our view of the law. And, in 2020, when that law was passed, we already had the law in Section 16, Title 16 of the state law. And, based on testimony, I think that came from my colleagues sitting here next to me and a lot of other people, we shared these challenges. And the legislature created, I think, a second path. Because if they really wanted us to take it to a vote, why would they do the other work? I think the intention, of the legislature was to give us a second path to move forward. I was not a legislator at the time, so I don't know, but some of you may have been sitting here. To me, it seems like there would have been no reason to add a second thing in Title 15. If their intention was for us to have a vote, why would they do that?
Okay, so my question was why the opposition to a vehicle, legislative vehicle that would clarify this. I don't have to go over the fact that our courts don't care what our intent is. What matters is on the paper, and that's been made very clear. And so I appreciate answering my question. Why the opposition to this vehicle? Why would we not use the legislature to clarify what seems to be a problem?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. First of all, we don't have a choice in the lawsuits. We didn't ask for them. They were brought to us, so we'll defend them. But I do think if there's ambiguity in the law, it would be nice to have that cleaned up. Unfortunately, from our perspective, the way that they're trying to clean it up is, what I'd say, not good for cities and towns. I mean, we have, I think, a mandate to make our community safer, and we're really struggling to find funding mechanisms for those. And I'm struggling to figure out a difference between this and like our sanitary sewer system. It's a really important thing that and a mission that we have to do. And we got to take that sanitary sewer. When you flush your toilet, we got to find a place for it to go. And when the Lord brings rain and snow and surface water, if we're going to make our community safer, we have to find a way to safely move that water to someplace else. And so, yeah, I would love for this to be clear. I read it and I think it's very clear. The legislature gave us two ways to do it. If we want to do revenue bonds or something like that, we probably have to go to, or bonds, we probably have to go to vote of the people. But if we're going to make it a fee for a service, we can use Title 15.
Okay. Senator Jones.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, how much will the average person in Cheyenne pay, just a private property owners pay with your AI assessment?
Mr. Chairman, through you to the senator, excuse me, the average homeowner in Cheyenne will pay $6.67 a month.
Representative, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll want first caution the committee to let's not prejudge the lawsuits that are pending right now. This is a live issue in court, so I want to make sure we're not doing anything to interfere with the orderly resolution of those lawsuits. But my question is under the section 1610-105, which is the section that's being referenced in this bill that requires the election to take place. That section kicks in under A, the first lines of this. If a governing body of a city, town, or county desires to establish a surface water drainage utility pursuant to this act, then you pass the resolution and you go to the vote. My question to you is, is a surface water drainage utility the only way to fund these things, or have you funded these projects in methods that do not involve surface water drainage utilities? Because if you're not using a surface water drainage utility, there's no need for an election. Help me understand what a surface water drainage utility is.
Mr. Chairman, through you, I'm not an attorney. I don't know how exactly to answer that question. We have been using money from our fifth penny sales tax and from our general fund to fund our operations for the surface water drainage that we do today. And so I don't know that we've created a utility. I don't know that we have, but we definitely have a fund that we use to manage this effort.
Okay, any further questions at this point? Go ahead, Senator.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Question for each one of these three is, why, if the project is good, would you not want to take it to the voter? I guess I'd like all three specific answers on that.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Crum, I think it goes back to the principles that I brought up initially, is that we believe this is our authority under home rule. And, segueing to the question that Chairman Boner just asked about, if you're not doing the stormwater utility, we believe this also fits back into our ability to do that through sewer systems with drain water. I mean, you could look at it a couple different ways, and I don't know if that's where things got segued. If there was a big capital improvement, that's where you would go to the bond and do a massive upgrade in infrastructure. But I think for basic utilities that flow into sewers, I think that's where a lot of our groups had used 15 prior to 16, making it more confusing. I agree with you and the principle you're pushing at us, but I also don't agree with you calling this a tax versus a fee. And that was the other thing I said in my opening statement, and from my past experience leading Wyoming Taxpayers Association and really understanding the tax structure and the mechanisms to levy funding for infrastructure costs, where this goes directly into an enterprise fund. I think that you're right, it's cloudy and we do need to clean it up, but we don't like this bill. And we would have to bring a completely alternate ghost bill to this bill for us to fix what we needed to be clarified.
Okay, so that question for everybody at the panel, so go ahead and take your turn.
Honorable Chairman, committee members, I'm Todd Fieser. I'm the city manager for the city of Laramie, effective last night at approximately 7 p.m. So exciting amount of hours for me to come in and testify and talk about some of the issues that we have going on in Laramie. I do have some testimony planned, but in relation to your question about if the project is good, why not take it to the voters? And one of my responses to that is this is not just a specific project. This is about providing a revenue source that provides for the maintenance and operation of existing services that we already have. As the business model is concluded and we think about what the city of Laramie has ahead of them, is we actually conducted drainage studies over the past few years to establish what the investment in our current drainage system and improvements would take. And unfortunately, that number is in the $130 million range, with $30 million of those projects being critical. As we work towards this, it's about the business case for the cities to take the management into their own hands. We feel firmly that under 15.7 that we're in the place when it says, and I'll quote to you, it gives cities explicit authority to establish and maintain systems for the collection and disposal of sewage and drainage, and to fix and collect rates for services rendered. That's what we're talking about, that we're doing under our surface water drainage fee that we have established. I want to give you a little history about Laramie's efforts. The ordinance that passed this fee was actually finished in December of 2024. The implementation of it was evaluated, credits were determined and established, and we released it, I believe, in July of 2025, which came with very little fanfare. based on what it was. Our council actually took the direction and stepped forward and paused the implementation of the fees so that we could continue to hear from our community. As of last night, we've approved a much lesser fee with more geared operations towards maintenance and improvements that could be funded solely without financing them through bonding or elections or municipal bonds, government bonds, or anything that we could handle and that we felt that our community was more palatable to. So to give you an idea, that rate was based, it was $1.67 per certain billing unit with no cap. Last night in second reading, our ordinance was approved with a cap of $20 max per $30 max per residential, $200 max per commercial. Now, to give you an idea, the average for Senator Jones and Laramie, the average resident would pay approximately $10.09 per month. The average commercial would pay approximately $40 per month. Now, that's not to say that there's some that are going to pay the full $200 cap, but we've changed it from certain entities. If I use one, which is a box store on the east side of our town, that was going to pay roughly $2,100 or $2,400 per month. Now, the most that they will pay is $200 per month. So that drastically reduced the amount of revenue that we were going to receive to try to address some of the problems that we have in Laramie, which are well seen. I think we shared our picture of what we've got going on in Laramie, but it also changed the model for what we're going to focus on, which is improving the maintenance of our existing program that's already in place. When you ask the question about 16 versus 15, is the city of Laramie isn't establishing a district. We aren't establishing a new utility like a Board of Public Utilities or a South Laramie Water District or anything that is that finite. What we're trying to create is a revenue fund or an established dedicated revenue that will support our continued operations and improve our operations and maintenance of our existing drainage systems. And that's where we feel like we are solely in 15 and secure. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Chairman, the city of Cheyenne has Dry Creek and Crow Creek and many other drainage ways. We have been, as Laramie, doing studies and trying to understand the hydrology and what do we need to do to make our community safer. And that number is in the hundreds of millions of dollars to improve our system. We recognize we're not going to be able to do that overnight. It's not a specific project. It's a series of small things that we need to do every year for decades in order to be able to get there. And from Cheyenne's perspective, again, we're not creating or changing anything. What we're doing is we're just trying to find the funding necessary to do the maintenance. You know, we have 4,119 inlets and we clean those out every year, but the pipes that go from there to the creek, I have no idea what condition they're in. We don't have the money to do it. We don't have the money to clean them. We don't have the money to maintain them. I have 25 miles of open channel. That's going to cost about $25 million to take care of. When the engineers design those, they're designed to be clean and smooth. Well, today we have trees growing in them and things like that because we've just not had the money. They're filling. We have 400 and some detention ponds, and over the years they fill, and so they don't have the capacity now to hold the water they need to. We need to go back and we need to dredge those out and clean them up. And so that's what we're looking for is a funding source to do just basic maintenance of the system that we've created. And that's why we were so pleased when in 2020 there was a different way for us to move forward.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, follow up.
Sure. Do you want the?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead, sir. Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Pete Laybourne. I am a Cheyenne native that represents Ward 1 here in the downtown and central part of the city. And I had the experience in 1985 of being in my brother's house one block up the street here. And when that flood happened, it filled this very room that we would be sitting in. It filled that, which was the parking lot at the time. Had devastation throughout downtown and throughout the city. And that was a long, long time ago. But things have changed in that period of time. And I think no one is probably more aware of that than the people that are involved in water management in the state of Wyoming. There's less of it, and it comes at different times. I think when we look around the country and around the world on the evening news, there's just no doubt that things have changed and those floods are more devastating. And when they do happen and they devastate, it really becomes important for us to come up with plans to deal with it. And we have. I'm familiar with those plans. I came and testified and participated in the original Title 15 law. Certainly aware of all that. And one thing I really want the committee to be aware of is how hard we've worked and the mechanisms that we've used. And as you drive down Central Avenue, you can see that large detention facility that we built. And I'm sure you're all aware of the 26th Street Interceptor that just got built to protect this very building in our downtown. We did that. We've used sales tax, we've used FEMA money, and we really, really, above all else, need maintenance money. And so I'd also point out that this summer was pretty dry. And it's certainly very unusually dry today and the past few weeks. That doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. And so when we look at that, I think we ought to look back to the summer of 24, where a series of storms rolled through Cheyenne that actually contributed more more stormwater over these three storms than actually happened in our great flood. And it taxed our system to the max. This isn't a attempt by anyone here on the council or in the city to take advantage of anybody, and I'm going to have to pay that same fee on my home and my property, and there's really no way around it. You can argue the law, but this is physics. And I just want to assure you that we have done everything we could within our budget and within our means to deal with this. And I'm sure you've seen throughout the community some of the channels that have been created, for instance, at Converse. And yet, where does that channel come out to? It comes out to a narrow, choked channel in the middle of our city. So I certainly can't argue the law, but I've been involved in this process for many years. And it is just one of those actual truthful facts that without maintenance money, someday we're going to experience something that is going to be very devastating. And I don't think any of the other communities in Wyoming are trying to do anything to circumvent the law. They know the problems just as we do. So I would urge you to think about this very seriously, because those effects are ongoing and they are deadly. Thank you.
Okay, and just a little bit of house here. Oh, before we got Senator Crum, it looks like we have Chairwoman, but just to speak, I don't think, I just poll the committee, I don't think anybody's here to dispute whether a particular project is needed or not. So I asked the representatives from WYOMING, looks like there's a lot. I know we're ahead of time, but I want to be efficient with people's time too. If there's any testimony that tells us about specific projects, I don't think anybody's disputing that at this point. So do your best to maybe modify your testimony and focus on the issue at hand, which is clearly, whether you go through the voters or not. So just a little bit of housekeeping there. If you could do that, I'd much appreciate it. Senator Crum, we'll just move on from there.
And I'm ready to move on too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My follow-up was just that we're not here disputing the project. I've had great conversations with several of you. The projects are valid projects. It's the question was why not take it to the voters, not was it a valid project? So we'll move on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to echo some of Representative Chestic's concerns legally between the interplay between Section 15, Title 15, excuse me, and Title 16. The Title 16 requirement of a surface water utility seems to be is crucial, and the ambiguity surrounding that is significant. And I don't know that we can fix that by just changing Title 15. And the changing of Title 16 is a really big deal, because it seems to be saying to me that if you are a surface water utility, which is a kind of a special district, let's say, that you have to do these things, which makes great sense to me based on our structure that currently exists. To then mix Title 15 and the 2020 amendment that was made, seeming to somewhat address the kind of things we're talking about today, goes really outside of the intent of Title 16. And so I guess what I'm saying here is that there's a lot of unintended consequences. It's rather complex what we're trying to do, more than we might think. Others have mentioned, well, we can talk about some of those ambiguities in the interim, but I don't think that's a wise way to approach this. We could create more confusion. And so that's point one for me is I'm really feeling like we might just need to take this to the interim so we can know what we're doing and be very intentional about our policies and how these two statutes line up together. But I think I'd also just like to ask anyone, but maybe Ashley particularly, I obviously represent a very rural district, and I want to understand, if we were to pass this bill, how might that affect small rural communities who don't yet have an enterprise fund, but may have some of these issues come up and need options on how to deal with it? How might we be constraining them, or are we constraining them? I just want to understand how this affects people in my district.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, Lolly, I think this would be critical for them to be able to provide the service without leveraging the use of a fee, which is what usually directly relates, and us being able to locally respond to devastating issues like we were just talking about. If it has to go to a voter, even if it's a wonderful project and everybody's around it, we have to do an election, or we have to do a special election. And that's just going to take time, delay cost, engineering, and special or smaller communities that are special to us. They don't have the resources like my friends up here today do. When we're looking at like a town like Warland, their pockets are not going to be as deep. And I can tell you that all of us are trying to work within the means, and especially back to my opening statements, and the less revenues that we're getting hamstrung on how we are able to provide services as a whole, holistically. So this, to me, is a holistic tax structure issue and local control issue. And that's why we are very passionate about this issue, and we feel like it starts creeping into all the enterprises.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Okay, any further questions at this point? Okay, thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Any further public comment on this issue? Come on down, don't be shy. Got plenty of space for you. Yeah, feel the chairs, come on up. Don't have to do one at a time. We're mostly friendly, so. And just as a reminder, the way we usually do things, just introduce yourself. If you're affiliated with anybody or just representing yourself, just go ahead and let us know and try to go through the chair so we can keep an orderly discussion. But welcome to the Select Water Committee. I'm sure we got a volunteer who wants to go first.
Okay, good. The green light's on. Since I'm in the middle, I guess I'll go first. Good morning or good mid-afternoon. My name is Roxy Hensley, and I'm a resident of Laramie, Wyoming. I believe I do know quite a few of you on this committee today, and thank you for having us here to speak. I am here to speak as a business owner and as a property owner in Laramie, as well as a property owner in many other communities, such as Jackson, Converse County, and Natrona County. Excuse me, I've lost my voice in the past. I'm here to speak in support of Senator Crumb's proposal to the legislation to put forth the stormwater issue to a public vote. I will readily admit, despite the fact that I am generally very well informed about issues, that I do not fully understand this issue or the events which led, in particular, the city of Laramie's decision-making in regard to why we're here today. That, I think, is the major problem with the status quo. Despite the city's efforts to inform, it has not been done in a way that the general public understands the need or any possible alternatives, yet the city's approach has very significant financial and seemingly unfair ramifications for many property owners. Many questions come to mind. First, I would put out that it is generally accepted that there has been fairly consistent precipitation in Laramie and throughout most of the state throughout history. So why is this issue just now surfacing? Has the city and other cities known about this and failed to budget correctly over the years and now finds themselves in a financial crisis? Or has the magnitude of the possibly been exaggerated by those who in the past to opportunity to vote their opinion through the ballot box? As such, I fully support Senator Crumb's legislation and urge its passage. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions? Representative Chester.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Roxy,
Yes.
nice to see you back over here.
Thank you.
So let's suppose I'm a City of Laramie taxpayer, which I actually am, and the issue comes to the ballot to put the current plan of the city to assess fees on my water bill. I pay I think $10.09 is my average bill. So I pay $10.09 a month to get this water project done. And there's testimony that the University of Wyoming would have to pay $48,000 a month. Are you comfortable with me saying, well, if I pay $10 and they pay $48,000, I'm going to vote yes because they're going to fix my problem? Are you prepared to accept the results of the election if there's an incentive for people who pay very little to make somebody else pay a whole lot more?
That's a good question. You know, for my business, and it's in the downtown, before the vote, before the city council now to change those fees, my business, I will pay $10. Okay. Now, where I live out in West Laramie, in Cottonwood Estates, where we have took our HOA monies and we built a water ditch to alleviate or to help with the stormwater drainage. We have no streets, we have no sidewalks, and my fee is around $60 a month. Okay. So, you know, it just, if the voters, I think it needs to go to.
Thank you for the time. My name is Arvin Martinez. I am a business owner in Albany County and in Laramie County. And I want to echo the same concerns that she has had. And I am also in favor of Mr. Crumb's. We need to bring this to the voters. I own a salvage yard in Laramie, Wyoming. The first initial storm drain fees that were assessed upon me were over $800 a month. And what's ironic about that whole thing is I sit right up against the railroad. When I went to the city of Laramie to build an additional outbuilding, we were getting a new bridge put over right next to my salvage yard. And I wanted to kind of tidy, as much as you can tidy up a salvage yard, I wanted to tidy it up. So I went to our city planner and he said, absolutely not. But, you know, you gotta non-conforming C2 property. But if you were willing to put in a sidewalk and curb and gutter and drain this water onto the railroad, we would consider it. And then, crazy enough, 9 years later, I have pictures of my salvage yard being flooded by the railroad. And guess what? The railroad is one entity that's exempt from this. So how is it that a local businessman like me has to pay this $800 fee, and yet the property that is flooding it is a railroad? Very, very disturbing problem. Okay, the way that this, and I call it a tax, was brought upon to us. Yeah, there was, you know, I'm kind of old fashioned. I used to pick up the Boomerang paper every morning and read the legal section and say, this is what's going on. We don't get a paper for 3 days of the week anymore. And some days, if the weather isn't good, it comes from Cheyenne, we don't get a paper at all. So we were supposed to understand that this storm drain thing, there was workshops about it. It was very vague on how it was presented to the public. And for that reason alone, it got passed. Very few of us knew about it until it smacked us in the face and we got our bill in the mail. Not only with this bill in the mail, we are getting a mosquito fee, and hopefully in Cheyenne, I don't know how that's going to work, but we were already paying a mosquito fee on the other water bill. So there's just a lot of wrong with this. Now, North 3rd, North 2nd in Laramie is a flood zone, and we have been dealing with that for a long time. I'm not against fixing the system, but we need to figure out how to adequately pay for this, that as a business owner, you're not hitting me for $800 a month plus. Now knowing that in Cheyenne, I have property over here on West 19th Street, almost a city block, I'm going to be paying a great amount there too. So I would urge Cheyenne, Laramie County, as well as Albany County, we need to bring this up for a vote. We know it needs fixed. We need to find the logical way to pay for it. Now I could sit here and point fingers of why I think it's unfair. The city of Laramie, I hope Mr. Freezer that just took part last night does a little bit better job than his predecessor. But at the end of the day, we need to find a way to pay for it, but not drive local businesses like myself out of business doing it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Appreciate it. Representative Cheston, you got a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Martinez, for your testimony. Nice to meet you in person. We spoke on the phone yesterday. So I think I heard you say that you understand there is a stormwater runoff problem in Laramie that needs to be fixed. My question to you is, if this bill passes and an election is held and the voters say no, how would you propose we fund fixing the problem?
Well, sir, it is a very good question. Okay. There's a lot of things that have taken place in Laramie to fund a brand new city building that's actually not in the city limits. And my question, how did that all become? That's another thing that got swept under the carpet. And us taxpayers are like, okay, where did this money come from? Why couldn't our old facility been remodeled and that 20 million plus that we spent on that facility been used for this stormwater? Now I understand that there's different elections, there's different entities that receive different money. I get that. But at the end of the day, when the city of Laramie or the city of Cheyenne is saying, hey, we don't have this money, but we just spent 20 million over here. Never mind, we needed new offices. So I don't know that I answered your question, but I'm going to tell you, if it goes in front of voters and it's voted on and it passes, then at least I know I got my fair share of everybody felt this was fair. But on the same token, if it goes to the voters and it's not passed, the city of Laramie and the city of Cheyenne needs to figure out how to pay for this. Now, I am totally in favor of raising the sales tax another % to pay for this. Not only are Laramie residents going to have to pay for it, or Cheyenne residents, everybody that comes across our businesses are helping fund this. So I think there's different ways of doing this. I don't have the answer exactly, but first and foremost, let's bring it in front of the voters. Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you, sir. Who's next?
Good morning, or maybe it's the afternoon. I'm not quite sure now yet. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name's Sharon Buccino, and I am here testifying on behalf of WYOPASS, which is the Wyoming State Planning Association, and as a resident of Laramie, where I serve as a member of the Planning Commission. I am a practicing lawyer, and I have taught a variety of courses at the University of Wyoming's College of Law, including local government and legislation. And I am here urging you to table this draft bill addressing surface water drainage and address some of the issues during the interim after the budget session. I will make my remarks here brief, but I do have some written testimony that I would like to have included in the record if I could. And I'm just going to make 3 quick points. One is, and I won't dwell on this, it's that stormwater runoff is a problem. And it's not just the big cities like Cheyenne and Laramie that have to deal with it. Lusk had a major flood that did in fact contaminate the drinking water and isolated the town because the bridge collapsed. So this is an issue about maintenance of investments from taxpayer dollars that have already been made. I will also, my second point, I will address that cities and counties need help doing this, addressing this problem. And the third, I'll try to explain, at least from my point of view, why I think this bill hurts cities and counties in addressing that problem rather than helps it. I just want one thing that I haven't heard come up yet in the discussion is that in addition to flood control, the issue of uncontrolled stormwater, it pollutes city drinking water. And that's why the Clean Water Act, the Federal Clean Water Act, has significant stormwater requirements. Most cities, almost all cities in Wyoming, do not have to comply with those federal requirements because it's tied to the size of the city or town, and it's a 50,000 population size, which triggers those federal requirements. But that doesn't mean that the contamination is not a problem, as we saw in Lusk. And it doesn't mean that the exemption prevents the problem. It doesn't do anything to prevent the problem. And that's why the cities and counties here are trying so hard to address it, and they need the legislator's help. So going to the issue of Title 15 versus Title 16. The legislature did, in fact, rather than address and put state funds toward addressing stormwater, the legislature has supported local efforts to do that. And we heard references to Title 15-7, the specific authority for the prescription of rates. In the general powers in Title 15, Section 1, the Wyoming statutes give express authority to cities and towns to, and I'm quoting, provide and regulate the construction, repair, and use of sewers and drains. As the legislature has long recognized, cities need this authority to deliver the services that residents expect. And then you have, as has been referenced, in 2020, the legislature added language to Title 15, expressly authorizing cities to prescribe and regulate rates for the diversion or management of stormwater. From a planning and a finance perspective, local governments need a variety of tools to protect residents, community residents. So in my view, this is not an issue about projects. It's about how the cities and counties can fund the maintenance. They can protect the investments that have been made through the through the projects. And there is a very clear distinction, and this distinction is in the Wyoming Constitution and it is in Wyoming statutes, between when a city, a local government, chooses to finance by bonds, incurring debt, or imposing new taxes that are applied equally to everybody. They have to go to the voters. And cities like Laramie do not dispute that. But what they need, and they have had, and they have used, is the ability to, and the flexibility to adjust rates, utility rates, to meet ongoing needs. And that's what this bill and this issue is about. And the problem with the bill is that it amends the section in Title 15 that deals with rates and is imposing a requirement for the election, which has never been applied to changing rates or user rates. And that's why I think the issue of the slippery slope is a real one, because if it's never done, that distinction is very clear. Bonds, user and taxes versus user fees. If you change that through this amendment in the bill, then that undercuts and calls into question that very well-established distinction. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Any questions? Okay. Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Madam Chairwoman.
Sorry, thank you. Sorry, I didn't get my mute off correctly. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Thank you for being here and your testimony. I think you provided some important context. And I wanted to ask you specifically, do you have the draft of the bill in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, because of your testimony and your obviously extensive knowledge of the different legal complications and considerations for this kind of a bill, as I look at page 2, lines 17 through 20, and considering the construct of Title 16, does that provision effectively do anything, really?
Yes, in my opinion, the problem with this bill is in this provision, because what it takes, the language just above that, as has been referenced, this language, the action that was taken in 2020 explicitly gave the authority to adjust rates, to prescribe and regulate rates. And it included for the diversion of management of surface water and runoff. It takes that and inserts after an election has been after an election as required by referring to Title 16-10-105. So for the first time, it is adding the requirement for our election to changing rates. And it's not just a question of whether you can get people to vote for it. Part of it is just the question of timing. I mean, the cities need to be able to operate as they respond to circumstances that occur. And so having to wait and take the time to do an election significantly ties the flexibility that cities and towns have to address a variety of kinds of problems.
Follow up?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that's what the bill is intended to do, but as I read this provision, it still depends on whether or not you come under the Surface Water Drainage Utility Act, which requires that you be a surface water utility. In other words, that requirement in Title 16 is not eliminated here. So one of my concerns is the plain reading of this really doesn't actually accomplish what it's trying to accomplish, which is what I think you just described. What are your thoughts on that?
Again, in my personal professional opinion, I think that this language and I'll just read it directly. The diversion or management of surface water runoff in compliance with the Surface Water Drainage Utility Act and after an election as required by Title 16-10-105. So in my view, this is changing the law significantly to apply language that is in Title 16. If a city or town chooses to create a utility, a new and separate utility, right now in the law, they have to follow all of those requirements in Title 16. That to create a whole new utility requires a tremendous amount. It's specified in Title 16. You have to have a board. You're probably going to have new staff to run that utility. I'm not aware of any city that has been able to do that. And that's why we heard the testimony that they're addressing this problem through their existing utilities. And so they now, though, and they came asking for the specific authority to prescribe and regulate rates. And now for that, they're also being required after an election. So I think there's quite a bit of confusion in trying to insert and tie Title 16 into Title 15 here. And in my professional view, the cities and towns have the authority to use the utility rates and change the utility rates to address this problem without an election, and changing that would be a drastic and significant change that could have a lot of unintended consequences.
One more follow-up, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Madam Chairman.
Thank you again for that answer. And I agree with you that there's a lot of ambiguity and confusion about even the way this would be interpreted. And I just direct you again to the as required by the section in Title 16. And that Title 16 only requires elections for surface water utilities. So again, I think because of the way this is worded, I have questions of whether this would do anything. Because what's required by Title 16 is that if you are a surface water utility, then you have to have this election. So we're saying maybe the same thing, but one of the questions here is the ambiguity itself that maybe creates even further difficulty of whether doing this not only creates additional ambiguity, but might not accomplish anything legally, because we haven't taken into account what Title 16 really is about. But anyways, if you have any comments you have on that.
I understand what you're saying, and just from a principle of statutory interpretation, I agree with you, but then I think the additional problem is that then in compliance with the Surface Water Drainage Utility Act and after an election as required by. So it would be very hard once this passes for city or town to get out of the requirement for an election for prescribing rates as well as issuing any bonds or imposing taxes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Representative Strauch.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the biggest question here, though, we're protecting the cities and the towns, but really, how are we to protect the people? I think we really need to get back down to that. We're losing businesses. So this was here to help protect the people. We forget about the people. I just was curious how you might address that.
Go ahead.
Well, I don't dispute the importance of protecting the people. And I think, one of the principles is that the best decisions are local decisions. But I think that is the flexibility to operate and address the needs and the services that the residents realistically expect and demand requires flexibility in terms of operations. And I've seen this personally on the Planning Commission, is the way to protect is to that that the elections of those who represent on the city council is another accountability and an important accountability. And this city council in Laramie heard that they didn't do the job that they should have the first time. And so they have invested significant time and effort and outreach in tailoring and reducing the fees. And that's how I would answer that question. And there may be people that don't find it sufficient.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. You good? Okay, all right. Well, thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. If you have no further comments, show of hands, who else is wanting to testify on this topic? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. We're going to go another 5 minutes and we're going to break for lunch, if that's okay. So feel free to come on down.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
We also do have a couple people online.
Okay. How many?
2.
2. Okay, great. Okay, that should be manageable. We have, we're scheduled until 2:30, though I imagine the next topic will take a little bit of time too, but feel free to come on down. Like I said, we'll go until 12:15, so we'll just see how many people we get through.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I may not be able to do this in 5 minutes, so I may beg time after lunch if that's okay as well.
Just yeah, that's okay. We'll get through it, and if we're a little late getting lunch, I think we'll all survive. So
all right, and I'll try to be as succinct as possible. So, my name is Patrick Crank. I'm here testifying on behalf of the University of Wyoming, with regard and in support of 26 LSO 0289. I think it's important this committee understand the history that precedes this bill today. So, in 1995, the legislature passed the Surface Water Drainage Utility Act, and that authorized cities and counties to create utilities or methods to impose fees or taxes to manage surface water. In order to do that, the act explicitly said you have to hold an election. The voters have to approve this. I understand that now Cheyenne, I understand through testimony in corporation committee meetings during interim topics, tried to do that twice and failed. The voters would not approve it. That's from the testimony of Mayor Orr at the time. In 2017 interim, in preparation for the 2018 session, Representative Dan Zwanitzer drafted a bill that essentially modified 16 to give the cities an out from holding the election. But it was definitely an amendment solely to Title 16. That bill failed in a vote at the end of that interim study group. In 2018 interim, in preparation for the 2019 session, Representative Pat Sweeney, WHAM, several cities lobbied hard to have, once again, an amendment to Title 16 to do away with the election requirements for cities, towns, and counties. They considered the Zwanitzer bill that had died in the prior interim session, and they considered what I will call the Sweeney bill, which was a modified version of the Zwanitzer bill. Ultimately, the Joint Corporation Committee adopted what was to become Senate File 20, which was considered by the entire legislature in the 2019 session. Senate File 20 once again tried to amend Title 16 so the cities could avoid putting this in front of their voters for approval. No amendment to Title 15 in Senate File 20. Senate File 20 died by a large majority on third reading in the Senate. It was a vote of 21-9 against that bill. So then we proceed to the 2019 interim in preparation for the 2020 session. By then, Representative Sweeney and the cities and WHAM came before the Joint Corporations Committee and they said, we need to amend Title 15 because there's a debate out there whether cities have the authority to regulate surface water. I think that was a silly proposition. Of course they do. The question is, when can they charge fees or taxes to do so? Ultimately, And in the 2019 interim 2020 session, no mention whatsoever now of amending Title 16, which clearly imposes an election requirement before you can charge fees or taxes to manage surface water. The Joint Corporation Committee ultimately adopted what became Senate File 22, which was solely an amendment to Title 15. It simply provided in its initial version, when it started on the floor of the Senate, that cities and counties had authority to regulate surface water. The bill title did not state that the bill authorized charging fees or taxes to manage surface water. That authority was added on via a second reading amendment in the Senate. That law passed and became effective July 1st, 2020. So that's where the amendment to Title 15 in 2020 came from. So at that stage, and that bill, once again, had no mention of Title 16. It didn't overrule Title 16. It didn't say, the legislature many times says, ignoring this statute, we're going to do this. It doesn't have any of that language in that amendment to Title 15. So having failed twice to amend Title 16, which is the way you should do this if you don't want to have an election, and get rid of the election requirement, WHAM and the cities pursued an apparent innocuous amendment to Title 15 to avoid the election requirement in Title 16. And since 2020, Cheyenne, Laramie, and Casper, maybe others, have now adopted surface water utility acts and are trying to impose fees for the management of rainwater. That amendment in 2020 has several fatal, I believe, constitutional flaws. First off, the bill title failed to mention that the legislation authorized fees or taxes. That's a violation of Article 3, Section 24. The bill was radically altered or amended during passage to change its original purpose, not just to clarify that towns and counties had authority to manage surface water, but to add fees. That's a violation of Article 3, Section 20. The bill was a revenue-raising bill commenced in the Senate, not in the House, as required by Article 3, Section 33. There are lawsuits pending in Laramie and Cheyenne challenging whether an election requirement is necessary and constitutionally challenging the passage of the amendment in 2020. And most importantly, I think in Laramie, we are alleging that this is a tax and not a fee. If it's a tax, it can't be applied to the state of Wyoming. Clearly, other Wyoming statutes provide that cities, towns, and counties, local entities cannot tax state entities for real property that they own and use in the regular course of their business. Maybe that'd be a good time to break and I can come back, or I can continue on, Mr. Chairman.
I think we have a few more minutes. You can go ahead and continue.
So this bill is a very simple fix to tell cities, if you want to impose fees or taxes to manage rainwater, you have to follow Title 16. That's been the law since 1995. You can't make an innocuous amendment in a constitutionally suspect manner to Title 15 and then start charging your citizens fees and taxes without their approval via a duly authorized and proper election. The Title 16 has required an election since 1995. This bill also provides a gentle and rational and thoughtful way to deal with those communities who have passed surface water utilities and are imposing fees. It gives them a whole year till July 1st, 2027 in the non-codified sections of this bill to hold that election. If the voters approve it, go forth and multiply. If they don't approve it, you have 60 days to quit charging those fees. It's simple, it's thoughtful. And I'm going to disagree. I don't know her name, but the very eloquent and able lady that was speaking on behalf of Laramie. I disagree, and Madam Co-Chair, I disagree with the reading that was given to Title 17 The reason this was drafted this way, I believe, by LSO was we wanted to make sure that cities maintain the ability to charge for, potable water fees, sewer fees that they've historically charged. And we wanted to make sure that it was absolutely clear, if this bill passes, that if they want to do the surface water fees to manage rainwater, they need to hold an election. That's what that language does. And I don't think it adds confusion. If I'd have to think about it, and I'd urge you to consult with LSO. If someone wanted to amend that section, it could be as simple as saying the diversion or management of surface water runoff can only be done after an election required by 16105. That's simpler, and maybe it gets rid of some of this concern that we're making every city, town, and county create and manage a surface water utility. That may be a simpler way to do it. I'll also note that developers, before they get a plat approved or they're able to develop property, have to pay for all surface water management. I mean, they have to install the storm drains, and that's a huge expense we're already putting on our developers. And now we're going to tax the rest of the citizens for what's already being paid for by our responsible developers as they attempt to grow municipalities. That just happens everywhere that I'm aware of in Wyoming. I guess the question I'd have is, why not let these lawsuits sort out the question of whether voters must approve these types of fees or taxes? Shocking as a lawyer, but the judicial system and lawsuits are not a very efficient or good way to sort out these kind of things. And I submit the legislature is a much better vehicle to answer these policy questions. And I guess the example I'd give you is look at all the angst over the Supreme Court's decision with regard to the abortion statutes passed by this legislature. That's a year-long process subject to multiple appeals, and it's just not an efficient way to answer these kind of questions. So I urge you to answer it with this bill. So your choice here is to empower local voters who will be affected by this additional tax or fee, or do you choose to allow this to continue and empower city councils on very questionable statutory authority in Title 15, which ignores and directly contradicts Title 16 to make these choices? I think the other important question is this a fee or is this a tax? And that is claim one in our lawsuit, UW's lawsuit against Laramie. If it's a tax, it's imposed on if it's a fee, it can be imposed on every government entity. University of Wyoming, the state of Wyoming. These ordinances are set up to tax impervious surfaces. There's a fee per month for how many square feet of impervious surfaces you have. Your roof, your parking lots, your driveway. This is a direct tax on the state of Wyoming unless we fix this either via legislation or a court ruling. School districts, think how many impervious surfaces school districts have in the state of Wyoming have. And the difference between a tax and a fee is a fee directly benefits the person paying the fee. A fee is like your water bill is probably the best example I can give you. If I use 100 gallons of water, I get to use that water to drink, flush my toilets, water my lawn, but I control that fee and it's a direct benefit to me. It doesn't benefit you if you're my neighbor or the person down the block. A tax does not have a direct personal benefit to the person paying it. There's always, hopefully, a public good associated with the payment of that tax. And that's that. But to be a fee, there has to be a direct personal benefit. And that's not the case with these surface water management fees. It's good that Cheyenne or Laramie has a healthy surface water drainage system, and that's a public benefit. But I own an office in downtown Cheyenne. I'm not going to personally benefit from the surface water tax I'll have to pay if the Cheyenne ordinance goes into effect. So That's a critical policy question. Do you want to tax school districts in the state of Wyoming for these, what can be extraordinary fees? I heard mention that probably the eloquent lady from Laramie said that Laramie is considering altering their ordinance. I think that's true. My understanding is on first reading, they have passed an amendment to their ordinance that would cap fees for people like UW. It changes our bill from the original version from $400 and almost $50,000 per year to maybe as small as $50,000. That does not remove that it's a tax on a state entity. It doesn't solve the constitutional problems with the passage of this bill. And it doesn't give the local voters the right to approve these kind of taxes before they have to be burdened by them. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Mr. Crank. Any questions? Senator? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a quick question to, since you're fairly familiar. On line 12, page 2, it's rates. And so we move down to line 15. It's water, right? And then we further describe surface water. So I would just ask you, in your reading of this, would this bill require the city of Laramie to go to the voters to change rates on a water bill?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Fornstrom, absolutely not.
And the whole explain the difference to me.
The whole purpose of drafting this way was to make sure that there wasn't an inadvertent effect of this bill where someone could say, if you're going to raise my potable water rate, my regular utility bill, you have to hold an election. So I believe that's why LSO broke this into two parts. It makes clear that election is only required if you're going to manage create a surface water drainage utility act or charge fees for that management. So it has no effect on other utility rates. I think that's a smoke and mirrors argument that I just don't see.
Go ahead, Representative Chester.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Crank, thank you for being here. I take it you're involved with the lawsuit that the university has filed, and you're probably aware of the lawsuit that has been filed in Cheyenne. I assume that the primary issue in both those lawsuits, correct me if I'm wrong, is whether what the city of Laramie and the city of Cheyenne have done, whether it's a fee or a tax, right? That's the principal issue. Would this bill, if passed, resolve those lawsuits?
Yes, and Mr. Chairman and Representative Cheswick, yes and no. I mean, I think if this bill passes, I would hope that rational minds with the cities and WHAM would say, okay, the legislature has made it clear we need to have an election. And that election, I think under Title 16, would resolve Title 15 and this innocuous amendment they're claiming gives them authority to pass these ordinances would be resolved. That's part of both lawsuits. The issue of whether this is a fee or a tax would be the only one that might not be resolved. Our lawsuit in Laramie on behalf of the University of Wyoming is this is a tax and not a fee. The amendment was unconstitutional for 3 reasons I've explained, and you had to hold an election. I mean, those are the basic claims in that lawsuit. Mr. Terrell, who's sitting next to me, his lawsuit in Cheyenne doesn't have that tax versus a fee question because he's not a government entity like UW is.
Okay. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, I wonder if we could get you to work with Mr. Anderson also and just quickly write down your proposed maybe change to the language there. You said that might make it simpler just to have it in writing. Maybe we could look at it after lunch if so be it, if that's where the conversation takes us.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Crum, I'd be happy to do that if Josh is willing to work over the lunch hour, but they usually do, so I'm sure that'll be okay.
Okay, well, there you go. That might be a good point. Stop for lunch unless there's any more questions for Mr. Crank. Sorry.
Thank you for letting me be late. I
That's okay. Yeah.
had it in my head this was at 1:30 and I rushed over here, but I don't move so fast anymore.
Well, I appreciate it. And, we'll go ahead and take a break for lunch and we'll finish up that public testimony. Be back at 1:30. So fast food lunch, folks.